Hello, everyone. This is Auto Asphyxiation. This is Lark.
And Kimberly.
That's right. And today we're going to be talking about the third space. I'm pretty sure you guys have at least dug yourself out of the snow or something like that.
Only to dig our way in back in again.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. Like if 1989, Ray Oldenburg kind of thought of this third space theory. And I think the thing that's really interesting about it is that so many people kind of who view themselves as progressive. That's the thing that always shocks me. That view themselves as progressive are like, yeah, we need more third spaces so that we can, the places that are not work and are not home, because your first space is home and then your second space is work, and the third space that we can like hang out at. And I always thought it was like a kind of an interesting type of a thing in regards to that. And I think the reason I think it's interesting is because I think in a way I think about critical geography and then I think about urban planning. Like the urban plan like essentially urban planning in its critical way used to be called geography. And urban planning that's connected to um developers and to like neoliberalism and reformism is called like urban planning, like in regards to the fields, like the academics fields, and it's kind of like a way of kind of, I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, on the third space?
I have to tell you, I learned so much just from the video that you sent me and from the script and everything like that because like I never really thought of like the third space as anything like super political or anything like that. Like I used to be a Starbucks manager and Starbucks, like that's one of the things that they push is like to be like the customer's third space for like people to gather and everything like that. And I mean, if there's anything like if there's any other name synonymous with corporate greed than Starbucks, please. So like I learned a lot about how this is really deeply steeped in patriarchy and misogyny. And I think that it's kind of a joke.
No, it is kind of a joke because I think in a way it's like it's centering development instead of centering people, which I think is really interesting. And just kind of like say, we thought about talking about this. We got this from the radical urbanists. Just kind of like give a hat tip to the guy that we listen to, and just kind of thinking about how it applies to New Jersey. And the thing is that I would think about Starbucks. One thing I think about Starbucks, which is very interesting, is that it started off as this place where everybody could go. Like, oh, we want you to come, et cetera, et cetera. It reminds me of like bookstores. Like,
Yeah.
remember in the 90s, it was like we had lots of little bookstores. And then essentially these big behemoth bookstores came about. And at first, it was like they had every book you wanted, like you could hang out there all the time. But once they killed all the little bookstores, then all of a sudden it was like their stuff became very limited. Like, oh, you get a lot of self help books. It became like, oh, you got to buy something here. All the things that was supposed to be positive, and I feel like the same way about third space. It's like it's a trap. It's like, it's like a centerist like cul-de-sac. It's like this, it's kind of like, oh, this is going to fix the alienation problem. I have never seen a third space promoted that didn't involve some kind of privatization, public-private
Yes.
partnership, even if it's like a free space. It's not really free because it's a thing that is kind of like, I think about Chicago. They had, and I can't remember the name of the park, but people who know will know what I'm talking about. In Chicago, they essentially had this park, but the park essentially was funded by like private, like no, it wasn't funded. It was funded by tax dollars. Once I remember what that was, I will say it, or I'll put it in the notes. But I think about like so many of these like spaces that are supposed to be for everyone, are free, but they're not really free. They're stealing from schools. They're stealing from our libraries. You're stealing from our museums. They're taking from our parks. these are which are I mean, I think that is kind of like the thing. Like these this the Oldenburg's third space theory, it's like bars, cafes, like it
Well,
is go ahead.
and he also talks about how like third spaces should not integrate genders. Because like men can't be basically in a nutshell, he states that like men aren't free to be themselves when women are around, and there have to be accommodations made for women like that are in like pool halls or taverns and spaces like that, and it just like struck me as like then it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it is, and it's not. And this is, and I think the thing is so disturbing to me is when I go to urban planning events and I go to like bicycle events, and they really just trot out working class people, often people of color, like, oh, we need to have third spaces. We need to like do this third space here. And I just remember growing up in LA and just third spaces being around. And then they essentially defunded all of our third spaces. But you know what though? I hate even talking about third spaces in a positive way, because the thing is, I've always said, well, is there a way that we can talk about third spaces, just to kind of like give people a quick understanding? And I think no, you can't. It's like reformist, it's neoliberal. It's like it's not a shortcut. People say, well, maybe it's a shortcut for a visioning session, and I'm like, unless you want it to be want to come up with neoliberal solutions, then that's not the way. I mean, that's not the way. And it's kind of, and I don't like the fact that they use kind of like this Buddhist terminology, which is like the third way. And the third
Yes.
way means like the middle path. And it's kind of, it seems like it's like this reasonable, neutral kind of like, oh, no two extremes. And I'm like, this is pretty extreme. This is pretty much economic violence. This is pretty much taking um doing public-private partnerships where the public pays for the rich to play, the public pays for gentrification, the public pays for these things, and they're like, oh, at first it's like, oh, we'll let you have some artwork, we'll let you have some, we'll pay a nonprofit to like build a garden there, we'll pay for, but it's really not,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
mean, go ahead.
a perfect example when I used to work for Starbucks, we used to have this program where like we would partner with 501(c)(3) charities, and we would, like our volunteer hours would make money for them basically, and it was like minimum wage. So like, like that wasn't, it sounds crappy to say that, but it wasn't, it was nothing to sneeze at when you got a big group of volunteers to do these things. And
Mm-hmm.
now Starbucks is not involved in that at all anymore. Like, and I remember like it dwindling down towards the end of my period of time there. We adopted a community center in Patterson, and they were reliant on us. Like we built a library there, we did food drives, clothing drives, like everything. We went there and set up the whole library. They became reliant on that partnership. And then like Starbucks was like, "Oh, we got to start walking these like programs back." Like that's what a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
corporations are going to do.
It's like because of social, because corporations don't have a social contract, so it's kind of like the social contract that we depend on, that is part of the government that we are part of. The U.S. government is us, and we are part of it. And I also think about, like a lot of my stuff. I have, we run a group called Space as a Means of Production, which is from Lefebvre, Henri Lefebvre. He's French. In 1968, he essentially wrote a book called The Right to the City. And in that theory, which is like 20 years before Oldenburg, it centers people. It centers people. And it also understands how space can be used to oppress people. Space can be used to essentially, wield power. And I think about what you just talked about with your Starbucks and how they essentially, one of the things I think they do, a salient point I think the third spaces do, is it turns a generation of people away from the government. And I understand some people are like, well, the government's evil, blah, blah. Okay, you know what? Corporations aren't good. Like this whole idea that, oh, this binary thing where, I think it's like, oh, instead of working together, organizing and demanding certain things from the government that we uphold, we essentially have to like write grants. We become like everybody's got to become a nonprofit and compete for funding. And the problem with this competing for funding is like, oh, if we don't get the grant, we're like, oh, we don't get the grant. Our people have to starve. Oh, that's our fault. I mean, this is the tyranny of the third space concept. Is that you have the situation where you turn everybody into a nonprofit. So instead of being upset about not getting, about a library closing down in Starbucks or a park being closed that it has a private advertising on it. Instead of being mad about that, we're like, oh, we should get a grant. Let's get together and like write a grant and like let's like we gotta do better because we didn't get a grant, so therefore our community doesn't get a library.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, and it's just it's. I mean, I think about like you know a lot of times we talk about oh what is going on with um you know, D10 and D11. And we talk about, uh, we don't, you know what, put it this way, we don't go to planning meetings. We don't talk about the affordable housing law. We don't look at the law and political economy situation, which means that the law affects what kind of power that we have. The right really looks at that, but we don't. We don't, we have this thing where we're kind of like, oh, we need to if we don't have public transit, what we need to do is build like a plaza to get more people to go to public transit. Or you take public transit rather than maybe if you funded it and it looked nicer and it was more frequent, then people would take it because right now it's not reliable. Like think about it right now. Like say you're working a job. Like right now, I bet you Wawa is open. I bet you
Oh
Wawa
yeah.
is open, which I'm like, how are the essential workers? But I bet you Wawa is open. I bet you the 7-Elevens are open. And it's this weekend, I bet they were open. And the buses have shut down at 6 o'clock.
Yes. Yeah, the
So
bus is shut down.
yeah, they shut down. And we don't have public, if we had a train or a light rail or we had a subway, those things could still be working. It could still be running. But because we have this thing, well, we don't think, oh, we should fund public transit. We don't think, oh, we should uphold the Housing Rights Act. We don't think about that kind of stuff. Instead, we think about, well, how can we draw business here? How can we draw corporations here? How can we not, how do we don't think about how we create community. We put places and developers ahead of human beings.
Absolutely. No, we absolutely do. All of the tax breaks that the developers get to put up all these new quote unquote luxury buildings are tax dollars that the citizens then have to bear the burden of. And our cities are in a deficit because of it. And what impact, where does that impact first?
I think one of the things that we have to really look at is a place that I feel was really into the third space concept was Jersey City and FULOP. And now they have $250 million deficit. And I am sure that the developers were getting all kinds of breaks. Like the amount of money, I'll put it this way. The development that has taken place in Jersey City, the fact that they're in a deficit is wild. That is wild to me. That they have a deficit. They have all of this development, they have all of these condos, they have all of this stuff. but yet they're in a deficit. And the reason they're in a deficit because they gave all of the, you know what? I'm guessing. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm
It's a
guessing.
solid guess, though.
Yeah,
It's a solid guess based on, your knowledge and your experience and your education. Like,
yeah, that what happened was instead of getting the community's fair share, you just let these people just build, 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 and you essentially gave them money to build. You gave them tax dollars of people who can't even afford to live in those properties. I mean, I think that's the thing that's wild. You took tax dollars from people that can't even afford to live in these developments,
yep,
and you gave it to people uh to build development, to build these mixed use buildings that essentially the people who are from Jersey City can't afford to live in. And I am all for density. I'm all for density. I'm all for mixed use. But I am not for um, the market first, the place first. It should be people first. It should be nature first, not
yes,
concrete and corporations. And I feel
yes.
like it's wild.
And
Um,
that's and I only have my Harrison as an example to go by, and I've spoken about that before, but that's 30 years of tax revenue that could be going to fund schools, going to fund public spaces, going to fund public transportation, beautifying things, making things safer for everyone, more accessible for everyone. But instead, those corporations have just gotten a free ride for the next 30 years.
No, I think it's a very good example because I see it and it's like, oh, instead of doing all these things that actually help the community, you're essentially creating a have and have not place where some people have all of these resources that are paid for by the people who used to live there. And I think
Yes.
that's the thing that's just kind of like they feel nothing about it. And it's like no one calls them on it. And it's like I feel like in a way that a lot of our, and this is one of the problems, and not so much in Jersey City and like Newark, but in a lot of these smaller cities like Harrison, I bet you they don't pay their mayor anything. You
Oh,
don't
they
have to,
probably don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to have any kind of degree or under, and here's the thing, you don't have to have a degree in order to run a city, but you can't not expect people, like people, anybody can run for office and not pay them and then think that these people can essentially sorry, they can negotiate with Manhattan. They can negotiate with developers from Manhattan, with like lawyers who went to Harvard and like Wharton Business School. You're expecting literally like people who, oh, I ran for mayor, I get paid $12,000 a year. I'm a school teacher, and now you're sitting up here negotiating with lawyers who are like who are sharks.
Yes.
This is the whole thing I think is really interesting. It's not like I don't think people are being malicious. I don't think they're being evil. I think they're just kind of ignorant. And I say that in a respectful manner. I think that a lot of these people are actually ignorant. Of course, you do have people who are making these deals who are smart, okay? But again, I told you, and I'm not gonna name the city, but I told you I had a student whose father was on the city council, and they didn't know. She said I would had a class. I teach economics, and I was talking to her about community benefit agreements, and she was like, "What?" And then she was talking about it was a place in urban urban Essex. And she was like, so you can actually have like you can make an agreement with them. And I was like, yeah, because this place that she was in, they had never done CBAs, community benefit agreements. And then literally like the next thing, the time they had a city council meeting, I see that her father had brought up the community benefit agreement. So a lot of these things aren't even about the people. It's not even about like, oh, these people are being malicious. They just don't know. Because
Yes.
how would you know? Like you tell me, you're like, oh wow, I didn't even know that I didn't know that the third space, I didn't understand that it was like a neoliberal like conspiracy to kind of like get rid of Lefebvre's right to a city. I want to talk about the Lincoln Park. That was a thing in Chicago. It was called Lincoln Park, and essentially they gave all kinds of tax breaks to this park that's supposed to be for everyone, but essentially it's a park with a development on top of it. Essentially, all the parking around it goes to the developers. I mean,
Ugh.
it's wild. I was like, okay, now Chicago. Now, I don't think those people were ignorant. I think somebody was like, oh, this is a way to because essentially this was in a part of Chicago that was just for readers, not readers, but for people who are listening, Chicago is probably one of the most segregated, racially segregated places north of the Mason-Dixon. Now we talk a lot about New Jersey, but Chicago, I think, has it beat. I remember sitting in a Chicago, like a restaurant, fancy restaurant, and not only was I the only Black person there, and as you know, Chicago has a lot of Black people, but I was the only person of color. Like there was no, there were no Latinos, there were no Asian people. I was like, this is wild. How do you do this? How do you do this? So that section of Chicago is a section that was very Black. And essentially they were like, oh, a third space. And another thing about third space is that it's very much a thing that they use in neighborhoods they're trying to gentrify. They're like,
Yes.
oh yeah, we're trying to help you. You don't you want a cool coffee shop? Don't you want? And you know what? Everybody wants a coffee shop and wants an art gallery. But if you're trying to say that is essentially what's going to build community and not like parks, not, I mean, we had, rent stabilization or rent control. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I think this is something that we don't talk about, that much. We don't talk about the fact that we are talking about bringing development and giving them deals, but we don't talk about essentially enforcing the Fair Housing Act. We don't talk about building affordable housing. And also, keep this in mind, affordable housing in New York, the New York metro area, and San Francisco and LA, you could be making $100,000 a year
Yeah.
and qualify for affordable housing. So when people hear affordable housing, a lot of times they're thinking Candyman. They're thinking that movie Candyman and people like going through the window. That is not what we're talking about.
That's not what affordable housing really is.
Oh, it is, and I think that it is not what it really is. It is just it's housing attached to what people actually make, not, oh, can we like charge as much as possible and get developers to take place or developers to whatever amount of money that they can make. Like rather than have that, I don't think housing should be a thing that you should be able to make money on. I think housing it is a public benefit, just like the post office doesn't have to make a profit.
Yep. Just like public transit doesn't have to make a
Make a
profit.
profit. Yeah, and I don't think housing needs to make a profit because if people can't afford housing, they're on the street. I don't understand how that's okay to people.
Housing is a human right.
It literally is. And then we're not even saying that as like some kind of joke. We're not saying that as some kind of like, joke. But also another reason that the right to a city, Henri Lefebvre's ideas are so good is because they're not just looking at development, they're looking at the environment. They're
Yes.
looking at, oh, you can't just build manufacturing plants here. You can't like in like CD10 in Newark. What part is that? The part that is I think the Ironbound area.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't just build cancer causing facilities just because, oh, it's by the highway or it's by the airport or it's by the public or it's by kind of like the docks or whatever. People live there.
Yeah.
People who live there, they have a right. They have a right to the city. So it's like, I think another thing about third space, which is such a problem, is that it narrows so much of what we should be talking about in regards to critical geography. That's why I kind of view myself, I call myself an urban critic. I also kind of view myself as a critical geographer, but no one knows what that is anymore. No one knows what that is. And it's like, that is all part of the plan. That's all part of the plan. The reason why we're talking third space, rather than right to the city is because of the narrative of corporations. And essentially, they have taken over this conversation. So we have the third space, I would call it's a really great example of mullet socialism,
Yes.
where it's like in the front, it looks like, oh, you're just saying people should like hang out and like have places to have fun. Yeah, we are saying that, but you in the back, you got Starbucks. In the back, you got, you got Harrison, 30-year abatement. You got like East Orange, 30-year tax abatements. You got all this stuff in the back. You got people who can't afford to live in these new developments. So it's like, oh, great, we have a coffee shop. And I'm not even saying, and I want to be very clear, I am not saying that coffee shops causes gentrification. I'm
No.
saying that if we're using that as a kind of like, oh, that's going to be a thing that's the thing that's going to build community, that's a problem, because essentially that theory is just based on building stuff. It's not based on bringing people together. It's not based on creating community. It's the third space is almost always market. It's almost always market based in how it manifests itself, even though they're very much like, oh no, we're not like that. And I think that it's, the thing is really really important is that, Lefebvre's work, it's not just access to urban space, but the power to shape and transform it. And the power to shape and transform urban space is a power, I think we've abdicated this power. We've abdicated this, and we're essentially, we become consumers. The third space also turns us from citizens to consumers. So we are like, my politician. Well, you're supposed, concierge service. Like, you're not supposed to do anything. You're not. You're just like, they're supposed to just do what I say, but you don't have to like do anything. It's like, oh, I'm your customer. And
Yeah.
that's not. Go ahead.
It's also a really forced feeling, like it's because in order to attract the kind of vibe that you're looking for, you have to do a lot of market research. And even with that market research, there's no guarantee that the coffee shop or the bar or whatever it is that your corporation opens on this street corner, there's absolutely no guarantee that people are going to flock there and stay there.
Exactly. I mean, it's no guarantee, and it's not going to be a guarantee if people can't afford to live there. We're not enforcing Mount Laurel. We're not enforcing rent. I want to say, I wish we could have rent control like old school. Like, I had an aunt in LA. She was paying $300 for her apartment.
That's
Like,
fantastic.
it was just wild. I was like, $300. Yeah, she's like, I have that was how rent control used to be. Rent
Yeah,
stabilization is like, okay, it can only go up 2%. But rent control means that your rent stays the same forever. And that's, and I think you build better communities that way. So we should have public land for public housing. And we should stop these tax abatements, like, without like community benefit agreements. And a community benefit agreement should not be kids get, oh my God, in Newark, Prudential community benefit agreement is giving kids hockey tickets.
that's no.
That is the community and job training, not jobs. I was like, and this person, I mean, I've written about it before, but this person, she was talking about Prudential should get all this like money to like do a redo of the Prudential. She was just like, oh, it was, they're such good community partners. They're so, and I'm like, this person went to Rutgers. And I was kind of like, okay, are you are you ignorant of how community benefit agreements work, or are you getting some on the back end? I don't know. I mean, Rutgers is a pretty good school. I don't know. She started crying.
Oh no.
The council, but what I think it was a, I'm not sure, it was a council person. Anyway, she was crying. She was like, "We have to give them this money. They've done so much for the community." I've never been to a hockey game before. I'm like, so you think they should get millions of dollars because they give Black and Latino kids hockey
Hockey
tickets?
tickets.
And the thing is, this is that a lot of those kids um are in my classes, and they're like, "Yeah, we like hockey." So they created a new customer base. Um,
No, that's exactly what it is because the kids the hockey ticket being free means that they have money to go buy t-shirts, a jersey, concessions. Like it's absolutely a huge return on their little investment.
and I'm not saying that hockey is culturally specific. I'm not saying that because anybody can play hockey. Anybody can play hockey. Anybody can do ice skating. But it's kind of like this is the first time I've gone to I've met um, Black young people who were like very into hockey, and it's totally fine. But I'm just kind of like saying in my own head, like, wow, like that's all they gave the community is getting a new group of hockey fans from a new demographic. That's literally all they did, and job training, and job training. And I looked at the community benefit agreement. I looked at it. So this is not me just making stuff up, but that's a
Yeah.
space. Prudential is a place for you to have fun. It's a third space. Okay. Anyway, but also, we think about, we need to have, public transit. We need to have environmental justice. We need to have, you know what though? I always say I say environmental justice, but I really don't like that term. I like the term I care about environmentalism because to me, environmentalism should already assume it's justice embedded in it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's this whole because they're always going to figure out a way. I swear to God, hegemony always figures out a way to like racialize things and like pathologize things in a weird way. So then they have, oh, we're going to have a conference. We're going to have the environmental justice people all on one panel. You know what that means, right? So like all the Black and Latinos will be on one panel. You don't have to go to that one. You could just, but it should be embedded in everything. Okay, anyway. Um, but it is, and we also too, we need to have participatory budgeting. We need to have ranked choice. We need to have like, essentially change, regional school funding,
Yes.
rather than having the city, because clearly every time I do like a rundown of what's going on in New Jersey, another school district has gone has run
Right?
out of money, and like the money has disappeared.
That no, that's seriously every time I open my news feed, there's something else going on.
And it's the urban one, it's the urban districts, it's the suburban districts, it's all of them, every single one of them. And it's just, I mean, we have 565 municipalities, which is a lot.
It's
Um,
a ridiculous amount. We are a tiny little state.
yeah, New Jersey is just not even big enough to have all of that. And I mean, this is a whole thing. The right to the city concept, it looks at all of that. It looks at the environment. It looks at public transit. It looks at housing. It looks at community. It looks at pro-social activities. It looks at not making everything tied to the market. And these are things that I think the reason why I think the right to the city is a superior um, paradigm and framework than the third space. And I would, challenge you if you are in a third space conversation with anyone, bring up right to the city, bring up right to the city, bring up Henri Lefebvre, bring him up because to me, Oldenburg and the third space thing is just essentially it's just capitalism. It's just capitalism made to look like community, and it's not. It's not.
It's more elite capture. It's just more elite capture. So now they're coming for our places where we gather. Like
Yeah,
there's no longer a right to just organic assembly. It always has to be sponsored by a corporation or in a corporate market or there's no And that is another thing that the video that you sent me, I forget who he was. Who was he? I'm so sorry.
He was a radical urbanist.
Radical urbanist.
Yeah,
But he was talking about how third spaces are very nostalgic. And nostalgia is ahistorical. Nostalgia and future thinking are incompatible with one another.
exactly, exactly. I think this is something that is a problem. It's this yeah, I think that this is something, when you think about nostalgia, you become reactionary, you become like, oh, how were things used to be? How did I mean, and I think this is dangerous. I actually read a book about it, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was just talking about the danger of nostalgia and how it brings about. Oh, I know what I thought. I know what I thought about. I thought about what's his name? His name nostalgia. I can't remember the name. I'm looking for the name of the Ray guy, of the guy who did. His name is Ray Armstrong. That's the thing is so funny. His name is, I don't know. I can't forget his name. Anyway, I'll link it in the comments. Um, but I think it's really, it's really really important that we challenge the whole idea of third space and bring up Lefebvre, bring up the rights of the city, because I mean I talk about it all the time. That's kind of like my whole thing. And that's what everything I do is kind of based on. And it is, we need to, we the human beings and nature and the environment is so important. And us being attached to capitalism and then trying to make it look like his community is so harmful. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
Thank you again. I really appreciate the absolute lesson that I got today. The Radical Urbanists video was very helpful. The script that you sent me was very helpful. It sent me down a whole bunch of rabbit holes. This was something that I really enjoyed learning about.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Okay.